I am so excited for the second part of this conversation as we lay some more groundwork on the foundations of conscious relationships, of when we've started to understand our stuff, reflect on our triggers, our wounds, the patterns we play out. We have a support network, community around us that can hold us to our highest. And then how do we create and what our journeys are with conscious relationships in love, sex, and intimacy? So, Charlotte, I would love to, hear some of your biggest lessons in conscious relationships in your dating life.
I would love to share. I would love to. I thank you for having me again. And I really loved the first episode because I feel like it was the real groundwork of like really diving into the foundational pieces which have allowed me to experience dating as a spiritual practice. So yeah, I guess. I guess one of the biggest pieces, I mean, carrying on from what we were speaking about with the conversation piece was learning to show up in my dating experiences, how I wanted to show up in life and how I wanted to show up in relationships rather than changing myself to make it a comfortable date or does that make sense? Like make it an easeful date. I remember the first date that I went on where I named something. I literally came to your house afterwards. I was like, I was a wreck. Do you remember?
From that moment.
You're like, I need to remember this moment.
First thing I did was like, take a picture. This is funny. This is a funny moment. Your hands are on my kitchen island and you're reflecting on that conversation.
Crunchy is definitely one way to describe it. But that was a huge milestone for me. So I guess before that, I had really learned to say no. I'd actually ended a date mid-date. Like this was like a year before, maybe like just less than a year before, in the summer. And then when I was dating, the next time was like February time. So there was a big gap. I kind of took a break again.
And so just so I'm correct, following the timeline.
Yeah.
And so if we start even further back, there's dates that you actually didn't leave, even though if I'm right in remembering, you knew pretty much from the beginning that they were not right, but you stayed on that date and then even gone to another date after, like a really long date. Like a coffee and then going to a waterfall and stuff.
Babe, I have slept with people after a date. You know, like my inability to say no. Like I can so laugh at myself now, and like I also am just like, oh, like baby girl. Like I had, there was so much going on for me whilst I was dating that I think a really big piece was my deep desire to fall in love. My deep desire to meet someone, and having that and having all of these unhealed pieces meant that I would give them the benefit of the doubt or like stay, entertain connections which I knew in my soul were an absolute solid no. And yeah, I would stay on it. But yeah, the one that you are referring to, I did manage to end that date. However, it was very clear that it was a solid no right at the beginning. Mm-hmm. So it was a full day date. Like he picked me up, he took me. Okay, so in all honesty, as soon as he picked me up, I knew that it was a no. I was like, whoa, like my entire system just.
How did you know it was a
no? I'm very energetic, like I'm very sensitive. And my body has ways of telling me. So it's nothing to do. And my mind is the one that tries to rationalize these things. And this is where I've ended up like staying on, because my mind has been like, no, you can't know that quickly. Like, no, like, come on, like, like all of these stories of like, give them a chance. And I like my whole body just had a reaction to the intensity of this person's energy. So he took me for coffee and he was invalidating everything that I was saying. He was so intense. And I actually remember on the way out, oh, should I tell? It's such a long story, but like, so, there was another guy on the balcony. There was one other guy who was listening to I didn't know, but he could hear everything. And then I left first, and one of our friends was in the cafe, and I walked past her, and she was like, "Oh, babe, how's it going?" And she knew, like, I was like, "Oh," and so she knew from my reaction, and she was like, "Are you gonna like carry on this date?" And I was like, "Yeah, I'll give him the benefit of the doubt." I think I literally said to her, like, "He's quite intense." It's like my words. And he had stopped to speak to the guy on the balcony, and then I'd gone down to the bike, and he came down. He was like, "That was so interesting." The guy on the balcony said I needed to slow down and let you breathe or something. And I was like, wow. And he's like, "What do you think that means?" And I was like, "Well, what do you think it means?" And he was just like, "Well, this guy has no idea how to hold space for women. He's like, he just doesn't get it. He doesn't understand." And then he's like, "What do you think it means?" And I'd said, "Well, I am quite sensitive, and you are quite loud." And he was like, "Well, that's nothing to do with me. That's not my problem. Like, how you feel is nothing to do with me." And that was kind of the start of me dating men who were in the spiritual world, but would not take responsibility for any of their stuff. Like, were very much of the, like, every single thing is a projection. So no matter how you feel, no matter what I do, that will essentially make you feel a certain way, like, it's nothing to do with me. Does that make sense?
Yeah, so what I love is like, noticing like how your body knew the signs that this person wasn't right for you, and it also sounds like this person wasn't a safe person to be around. But it sounds like at that point there wasn't like the wiring in your system to know that it was also safe to leave at any point, or that it was okay to leave at any point. So I love how you've tapped in even at the beginning of this conversation that like the learning of putting yourself first, even if it creates like a lack of ease or in the dating environment, even if it creates discomfort for the other, allowing yourself to put your needs first.
Yeah, which is essentially like was the biggest piece, was me learning to be able to put me first and say no regardless of their reaction, which I had just never been able to do.
So huge growth here, huge growth. And so even this lesson around noticing yourself date people that couldn't take responsibility, how did you come into awareness with that? And then how did you change that?
Well, that date in particular was a big one for it. He was the first person that I was that intense with that the perspective that he held, and I kind of stood back and noticed this and was like, well, where do I need to take more responsibility for my patterns? And I was like, well, I'd gone towards this guy and I'd entertained, there was still parts of me that I was needing to look at. There was still parts of me that were needing to be healed, and he was a beautiful opportunity to do that. And it was also just like, these were the first dating experiences of me seeing how important it was to take responsibility in relationships, and I'd never been in conscious relationships before, and I think that was just such a mirror of like, this is what it's like to not have that,
And it sounds like it's growth from emotional unavailability and being like, okay, so I'm now bringing my stuff, but then like the next step of like, oh wow, you're not taking ownership, and therefore then what's the next piece is, yeah, not being in a relationship with people that aren't able to take ownership. Like what a transition of like owning those parts of yourself and your
Yeah.
needs in a relationship, allowing those to be the priority. And because
Yeah,
it
it
sounds like
felt
this
really
also
big.
transition from, what we spoke about, and we've spoken about it as like a common theme of like how, and I'll take my responsibility for it, but like how I would date and be so about what the other person thought of me. So it'd be like, oh God, do they like me? Am I okay for them? Like all of this, that I wasn't even concerned with the fact that they weren't able to meet my needs. So it was such a huge shift. And so this sounds like such an incredible mirror of, wow, this person could completely not meet your needs. And what an awakening of realizing like the needs that you need to be met for you to go on dates with men.
Huge. I resonate with that piece so much. You know, that you're going into a date with the perspective of what are they going to think of me? How do they view me? Versus like, how do I feel on this date? Like, how do I feel about them? Like, that's a huge shift and takes, yeah, like completely changes the game when it comes to dating.
Yeah, and it's such a shame that we're never really taught this. Like this is where I wish we had like these dating classes for teenagers, because I remember looking at magazines, and it'd be like 5 steps to win your man, 10 steps to like this, and it's like, why do I need 5 steps to win a man? Like I need to sit with what I want and what I desire and co-create that and check if someone else can meet me in that. I don't need to win anybody. This is not how conscious relationships work.
Yes. Yes.
We're
Gosh,
taught from a
that's
young
powerful.
age that there's things that we need to do to garner other people's affection and validation. And therefore that's subtle manipulation or covert playing out of needs in relationship. It's like the epitome of what we're moving away from.
Yes. And also something that you taught me, which is, I think this would be my favorite piece. There's been many, but also knowing that like there's no I can't remember when you said this to me. You just looked at me and you're like, babe, there's no wrong moves in dating. Like, when you just have to trust yourself and also trust that it's going to work out exactly how it's meant to work out. Like what is meant for you when it comes to dating is not going to pass you by. So therefore, like you cannot make any wrong moves. And like knowing that also allows you to show up in a dating perspective of like, no matter what goes on here, like if I'm just learning to be my authentic self and like, I show up like however this unfolds. And I think that, referring back to that idea of like winning a man or like doing, like, it's like this idea of trying to get something that what it's not maybe meant for you. Like if it's meant for you, it will be yours. Does that make like, yeah.
Absolutely. And this feels like it even stems back to, the beginning of our first conversation around like the needs, the parental wounds of like those needs of like, yeah, validation, approval, acceptance, to like win someone to be claimed, how they play out within our relationships. And therefore we think we need to do or be certain things in order to have relationships or to be loved. And really that's, yeah, covert manipulation. And that's right. Yeah, I love this. And I love how you reflected it back to me, my own dating journey of like there not being wrong moves, because yeah, we may make mistakes as humans, we'll be messy and vulnerable. We're not saying we can never be wrong, but like there's this idea that, and it comes from, and I remember, I've got an older brother. So reading this book at, I must have been like 15 when he introduced me to this book and The Game, and like these dating rules for men around winning women and things like that. And this idea that you need to do certain things in order to win people's affection or a relationship with them or like hook them in. And it's And actually, it's like, why would we want relationships based on game playing? And actually, there's no wrong moves when we just see other people as our own mirrors, and a deeper invitation to look at ourselves and allow ourselves to meet our own needs on a deeper level.
Yeah, because if you're having to manipulate someone into being in a relationship with you, that relationship like is most likely not going to be in your highest. You know, like because it's based, the foundation of that relationship then is manipulation and playing games and inauthenticity.
Like,
yes.
And they only like me if I do this. Like it's, but it's so interesting because it feels like this was such a huge theme in pop culture. You look at the themes and stuff of like rom-coms and people changing for their man. Like, we want to see films and things where we get to see people grow in love, like sit with their uncomfortable feelings, take ownership, have really grounded, calm, like conversations, moving through conflict, seeking therapy, seeking support, and moving through love with ease and grace, even if it's sticky and uncomfortable at times.
Yes. And I mean, yeah, I can't think of really one film that highlights that healthy, conscious relating in like popular culture, but I see it growing so much within the community, and it's so powerful to see, and like, yeah, it's a game changer. For sure.
Yeah, and it makes life easier, and we're moving away from drama and intensity, and often that can be confused with love, like the intensity and intensity can be confused with chemistry, and actually, yeah, like moving into models of like grounded love of when there isn't that drama, but then I guess drama doesn't sell. I mean, drama sells, so that's not like easeful, just calm conversation going to the blockbuster. Oh, this is my piece. Great, thank you for hearing that. I feel so much better now. We're done. We're complete.
Great, happily ever after.
Yeah. But holding the vision that there will be, that there will be models, and there are more models, and we've been lucky to like learn these techniques and learn these ways of relationships. And so in terms of dating, I love the theme that you picked up in our last conversation around this caretaking or mothering, like roles that you can take in relationships. And so I'd love to know, more how, you notice your patterns show up and how they affected the dynamics. And then, because it sounds like through noticing your dynamics of like caretaking or mothering, noticing that you weren't actually getting your own needs met, and therefore realizing you have to shift something in order to get your authentic needs met in a relationship.
Good question. I actually noticed this. I noticed the pattern playing out, but I didn't know what it was, or like where it was coming from. Like I'd noticed that I would meet men, and then they would emotionally dump on me, and they would they would then turn to me, and it would turn into a really weird dynamic, and me at the time without any boundaries and without really fully understanding like what was at play, and also like wanting to fix and also wanting connection. Like some of these guys I like really fancied and would really have loved to have dated, and so when they would, when that was happening, like I would just fully lean in and like be this support, and it would end up being like I would be giving them, like I would be coaching them, or like and then I would wonder why I would then resent it, and I would have these feelings of like what's going on here, and I remember when I first started changing this pattern, and I put in a boundary, and have you ever I put in a boundary, but I was really harsh. Because when I was first
Yeah.
learning how to do it, yeah, I just like went
Like,
fully the other
could
way.
be a bit mean because we've never really put in boundaries. So of course,
It
we're like,
was
don't ever cross that
so
line.
mean. Literally like deleted, blocked, like all like so harsh. And I keep thinking of this one guy I did it to, and I was like, oh, I'm so sorry. But like at the same time, like he was really like
Mm,
really emotionally dumping on me, like really heavy stuff. And also like the way that it often panned out is that that would be the only time that they would like that was when they were most leaning in, and
mhm.
it was when they had something that they wanted to like emotionally dump on me or share, and they weren't meeting my needs in any way, shape or form. And so obviously it was creating a lot of resentment, and also in ways like that would happen, and then they wouldn't oh my god, there was this one guy at university who I was in a really unhealthy thing with for about a year and a half, and like he would emotionally dump on me, and and like he even had other girlfriends in this time of him like me and him being in connection, and he would never meet up with me, like he like and then I would like try to pull away and be like, no, like this, like what is going, like and when he would feel me pull away, he would then meet up with me and take me for donuts. I remember this very specifically. He would take me for donuts, and then he would be like, okay, so are we okay? Like, you're not going to stop talking to me now. And I would be back in his hook again, and I would stay in, and like this was so apparent in a lot of my relationships. I just didn't see what was happening, and when I did, like I say, I started to like put in these really firm boundaries, and now it's really like, even now, like I'm dating a guy, and I'm so aware of this pattern that I'm almost over. I'm like, I need to make sure that this isn't playing out in any subtle way, because that is just not a dynamic that I like. Once you introduce a dynamic to your dating situation, like it's hard to navigate out of it. Does that make sense? Like it. So yeah, it's been a really really big process, and boundaries has just is the biggest piece for that. Creating boundaries. I would love to hear how you navigated that.
Yeah. First of all, I just love hearing about your experiencing, and it's something I really appreciate about our convos are, yeah, the lightness, like this, and this is something I really want that will be just present through these, yeah, just through how I like teach and stuff, is just the lightness of which we can hold and be with our stuff, and the acceptance of like, this is what I did, and like, is it okay to make it's okay to make mistakes, and like, wow, I put in
Yeah.
a really hard boundary, and I that way, and I blocked them, and and like holding it with like this lightness, and like, yeah, I got it wrong, and like
Hmm.
in that different sense, like there's no wrong with dating, but like that like, I made a mistake, or like I that wasn't quite right, and here's how I'm learning from it, and just that humanness from it all. Yeah. Yeah, so my mothering piece, the classic mother wounding. So yeah, the caretaking. So mine comes from a codependent theme. And yeah, well, I would find my place through, yeah, caretaking men. Um, and similar, then feeling resentment. But actually, when I was younger, I actually just I wasn't aware of the pattern until I started feeling resentment and realizing, until I was like, this isn't quite right. Um, but it's like we don't know, like, I didn't know what was wrong until I had better. So I
Hmm.
didn't know that, wow, I actually don't want to be connecting with men in this way, until I started connecting differently and realizing, like, wow, there's some people in my life that I only connect through, yeah, fixing their problems with them, and like going through that. And I guess that's where I found safety. And it's also like the breadcrumbs of connection, of like, this is the best that I can get. This is the best way for me to connect. It's like, if I am giving you my all, and I'm here for you 24/7, and I'm able to hold all your stuff for you and be this person, that's like the best that I can get, and I'm happy for anything in return. Which comes back to like, the codependent theme, and like, so that's been really potent. And again, it was boundaries, and I definitely made mistakes with boundaries, I think, as we do, but boundaries and like space, I sought space from people in my life, and like, and that's what I really, it can be scary, but like putting boundaries in and having space and being like, we need to reevaluate this dynamic, like this isn't working for me, and becoming aware of that pattern that I would play out with certain figures, and then being aware of in dating. And again, now I've been very conscious of it with my relationships, and because also I'm disempowering someone else. I know that the men that I'm in relationship with are so incredible, like wise, like inspirational beings. Like they are, like, I'm in awe of them. So therefore, I don't need to be the caretaker or be that person, because I know they've got it. And then when I stepped into that, it's like, wow, now I'm being held, and that's the vulnerable piece. My subconscious benefits from the codependency was that I didn't have to be fully vulnerable because I'm the caretaker. And actually, that is deathly scary to a part of me, to need to lean on someone and be so vulnerable with someone and let myself be held.
Yes. Yes, it's almost this like subtle control piece of the people that you date, which we've spoken about before.
Yeah.
Is this like, if there's an aspect of the dynamic where you're slightly in control, it means that you don't have to be fully vulnerable.
Yeah, that's the codependent thing of, and it's so subtle, and especially at this point where it's been healing for years, so it's not something I fully identify with. Actually, I feel balanced and secure, and I feel really healthy in my relationships, but I need to catch it. I need to be aware, like any kind of addiction, that was an addiction of how I would meet connection. So it's something I need to be aware of, like the other addictions that I've worked really fucking hard to heal. Like, where is this showing up? And then what part of me is afraid or needs something right now, so I don't play this out with someone. So for example, with codependency, if I follow that thread, if I was afraid of being vulnerable with someone that I'm in love with, it's like I need to self-soothe and hold that little one in me and let her know it's safe to be fully held by this being. It is so safe, and I don't need to enact patterns of caretaking anymore, and let her know that it's okay.
Yeah.
Just like, where we've healed our relationships with other areas. Yeah. This real conscious relationship, like with food, sex, drugs, alcohol, all of it. What is the deeper need that's being met? And it was safety through codependent dynamics.
Yes. Wow. Gosh. Yeah. It's just so wild, like how that can play out. And it really, that you're so right about, like, and I think that's what I was meaning when I was saying, like, I'm dating this guy now and I have to be so aware of making sure that it's not playing out, because as you say, it's such an addictive piece to go into when it comes to relating. Yeah,
and I feel like with dating, another challenge is like our hormones are activated, like all the serotonin and oxytocin, like, oh my gosh, I was saying to you, I think literally on the phone earlier, like, do I love this person, or is it the hormones? Like, yes. Ovulating. Is this the love of my life, or am I ovulating? And like, and then there's the deep need for like love, partnership, validation, approval, that are all these like deep pieces in the tapestry of our stuff, that like it feels like it takes this conscious awareness of like, from what part of myself am I acting or am I behaving from? Is it from my higher self, or are there other parts playing?
And I feel like this is why it's so important to have people around you who can hold that highest vision for you. Because I think, it's so okay. And I think this is, a piece often with the whole independent single woman thing, that we can feel like it's a bad thing to say, like, no, I deeply want to be in partnership, or I deeply want to find love. And like, it was a whole thing, me coming back to being able to own that, but from a healthy place, and also know that that is something in my system. So to be so aware of that whilst I'm dating, because sometimes those desires can really overshadow it's like it can cloud your judgment, and you can kind of have rose tinted glasses on when you're dating people and you're not in your highest. So it's like, it's so important.
I'm laughing to myself because it reminds me of something my therapist said to me. One of my other patterns has been so one of my coping strategies growing up was like dissociation, or like checking out and daydreaming and filling in the gaps as of reality in the way that like felt, dissociating into and therefore we noticed through 7 years of therapy that one of the themes in dating would be like, I would fill out in the early stages of dating like all my projections, but to the highest of the other person. So I wouldn't be able to see, and this comes down to our red flag programming as well, like how we're wired to ignore red flags to create safety with our family. We're wired from, but I would go a step further of like, and I'm just smiling as that tone when a therapist wants to hold you to your patterns, but without saying like, what the fuck? And she's just like, I'm aware, do we think that this pattern might be present here? And I'm like, yeah, you know what, it bloody well is. But projecting the lightness onto people at the beginning of the dating, like fully like giving them the benefit of the doubt to an extreme, and then coming crashing down a few dates in. But how that young part of me felt, like she found love and happiness through filling in the gaps rather than seeing what was really there.
Yeah, and it's this piece of not seeing them for who they are. And like, and you've also shared, which I found so powerful to internalize and work with, was like, when at the early stages of dating, when you don't know someone, there is a lot of room for your projections of them. Like, as you see them more, as you date them more, you get to know them more. So like, it's the reality of it. But right at the beginning, like, there is so much room. And I mean, we've spoken about this before, but those future projections were wild. Like, I'm so there with you. Like, yeah, and daydreaming and I like to call it astral projecting these days, but
I think a spiritual term into it makes it easier to hold. But yeah, so the space between projections, and that was a really potent learning I had from my psychosexual somatic therapy training, of where we were in this group container and naming our projections. And I remember the teacher just saying like, look at the space for projection when you don't know each other. You fill in the gaps, you fill in the space, but it's just with your own assumptions and your own stories. And often then in dating, because it's fueled by like a deep want probably for partnership or love or whatever, maybe if it's a conscious need for love or a deeper need for something else, those projections often play out and we can run away with them. And actually, so if I look at my own stuff, it's like, or for future projection, I actually just saw a meme the other day around like, be right back, just planning our wedding after our first date. Like we joke about it in pop culture, and really that
is that a cancer meme by any chance? Because I've definitely seen that.
Oh yeah, Charlotte Star, her sun sign is Cancer, and
we like to blame that on everything.
Blame on the stars. It all comes back to that, not our trauma. It's all in
nothing to do with me. I take no responsibility.
And yeah, so I was like thinking about like future projections, and really like we're wanting to create certainty. We're wanting to create this uncertainty in the early days of dating. Like we don't actually know, like dating is messy and it's vulnerable, and it's like I love this quote one of my teachers said around like love itself isn't safe. Like we are giving our heart to someone that we have no power or control over. And that's one of the bravest things that we can do. And so therefore it's like in these early doors of dating, it's like, how can we create safety? Probably by future projecting and letting a part of us know like, oh, actually, they're also on the same page for me. They also want the same things. And we might not actually know if they do.
100%. And something that becomes apparent then though is like, the more you let yourself run away with that, the more you let yourself indulge in that, the bigger the crash is. Or like the bigger that it's like, because you've created this idea of what this is going to be like, and so and like you said, it's like usually your highest projections of them, and so when reality like comes with those experiences, it's you have to face the difference and face the fact that that's maybe not how it's going to pan out.
Yeah, like a crash bottom. And it's just grieving. Then we're grieving that the future that was never there, the future like that's been created. And so one of the biggest tools that I found, I think, we're on the same page here, is like that's helped me find safety and security in dating when there's a lot of uncertainty, is things like relationship check-ins. Like what are boundaries, like what are my needs ahead of time? Can this person meet them? What are our boundaries and agreements? Because the amount of times that I've been like teaching and coaching someone, and it's like, I think we're exclusive, but I'm not sure. So it's like, are we even on the same page? Like, how can we have these conversations so that those future projections, there's not so much space for future projections or projections of any kind, because we're deeply rooted in the truth of the relationship through conscious communication.
Yeah, this is huge. And I think there's like something, because this is something now that I'm implementing within my dating, which has been, massive. But it really calls you to let go of this idea of being the cool girl or being the cool, these personas. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. Like if you see any kind of like reality TV or like whatever it is, anywhere really, the programming is like, oh, don't ever ask like what are we? Like, don't be that girl, and actually like, oh my God, be that girl, have those conversations, like let yourself have that safety. And that has honestly transformed my my dating experiences, and but it does call for you to be really honest and really let go of those personas.
I love that. And like owning the persona of like the cool girl or the person that doesn't have needs, and they can go with the flow and be laid back. And like really actually what we're saying is like, I'm lovable because I don't have needs, and I'm not going to cause any discomfort for you.
Powerful.
And so I would and it reminds me of also when I see on like dating profiles when people may say like no drama or good vibes only.
Oh my gosh.
And it's
oh my gosh. That drives me insane. I steer far away from good vibes only on dating profiles.
And it's the same here. I'm like, great, eliminate yourselves, because for me that's a red flag. That for me is saying you can't hold my emotional process. You're not willing to have honest, deep conversations.
Yeah, you see that as drama, like having conversations, honest and real. Yes,
or being held to your highest, held accountable, or like the depth of intimacy as drama, and life isn't good vibes only. life isn't. And so why would we expect or want our relationships to be good vibes only when that's not authentic?
And, you know, like we've said, like having these conversations in dating, like it feels so good to know that you're on this, like coming, like I'm experiencing this now with the guy that I'm dating, and having had the experiences that I've had over the past like 2 years, that safety that comes from being received and like being able to have these conversations, even in the early stages, is just like incredible, like so incredible. And it just feels so good to be able to like honor yourself in that way, and also meet someone who's able to hold you in that.
Yeah, this is so beautiful. And I love how you said, like, honor yourself in this way. And that change from that persona, the archetype of the cool girl, and like actually coming into like, I deserve to honor myself. I deserve to have needs. I deserve to be met. And I deserve to be held in this. Like, my needs are not too much.
Yeah, I'm just laughing. Because my persona now couldn't be further away from the cool girl. I don't know whether to name this or not. I'm gonna do it anyway. But like, like the person that I have dated recently, asking him to go all in casually, like when I first met him. And it was funny. I was so like, it was so, I didn't mean all in, like, you know, like I was talking emotionally. I was talking like I wanted to be able to feel him more, and I couldn't. And like, but even just saying that to a guy who I just met, like, that's wild. Like, that could not be further from being the cool girl who just like is whatever. And it felt great. Like, it felt so good to be able to do that, because that's what I desire.
Oh my gosh, this is so fucking gorgeous. And there it's like knowing what you desire, and you know, desiring, because what I'm hearing is like you wanted to feel him, you wanted to feel his heart. And that's what you need in dating experience. And if you're going to invest your time and your energy and your presence with someone, that's what you require. And so allowing that to be voiced, it's like the deepest expression of authenticity, and being able to be met in that.
Yeah.
And so as we really like celebrate and appreciate this journey, like, yeah, I'm so just touched, like hearing you speak about it in this way. What helped you let go of the persona of the cool girl, aka I don't have needs in dating?
Great question. I mean, I guess one of the biggest pieces is like seeing how unfulfilling and how resentful I felt with all of the dating experiences I was having when I was pretending to not have needs. When, you know, when I wasn't,
Needs.
yeah. And like, and I think as well, like a really big piece of that is getting to know yourself. If I look back at those dating experiences, like I guess I wasn't anchored in my womanhood, in like who I am. I was still in like my girl, like my little girl phase, and like just really wanting to be loved by someone, like my maiden self, like hoping to be saved. Oh my God, would would quite happily have like just been saved by someone, and like someone pay for me for the rest of my life. Like that was the mentality that I was in.
So like learned helplessness.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
That piece. That was a really big piece in my mentality. And so like real deep healing of like what I needed, and like learning to meet my own needs, because that was a big piece. Like I wasn't even meeting my own needs at that point. I didn't know what they were.
Yeah.
So then, you know, the celibacy piece, meeting my own needs, pleasure-wise, meeting my own needs in terms of my life, really stepping into like my purpose and my power, allowed me to then take this into my dating experiences and be like, you know, like I know who I am, I know what I want, these are my needs, and I fully trust that, like, if we're meant to have a great dating experience, then you'll be, my needs will be met.
This is so beautiful. And yeah, it sounds like this is, what we spoke about earlier, of like that transition from will they like me? How do they perceive me? To how do I perceive myself? And meet someone in that groundedness of I know who I am. And you didn't say this, but it sounds like also there's security that, you said, my needs will be met. But it sounds like there's also the insecurity in yourself of acknowledging that some people might not be able to meet our needs. It still doesn't mean that it's still safe to ask for them to be met, even if someone can't meet them. Like that was one sort of like, even on a nuanced, like day-to-day basis of like, I'm not available, or I can do it later, but that it's safe to. And that's actually cool.
Yes.
This is the new cool girl. This is it, where we're honest and we name the thing and we're having like connection. This is the cool thing.
Yes. Oh my gosh, 100%. And also, like, just to expand a little bit further on what you're saying, is it's like knowing that no matter what unfolds with another person, knowing that you have got your own back and you are, like it's anchoring in that deep sense of like, I love myself so much. I can meet my own needs. Like my life is so full that regardless of how this conversation goes, regardless of whether you're able to meet my needs or not, like I'm going to be okay. Like this is going to be fine. And that never, that never used to be how I was in dating, because I would put so much pressure on it to like, for it to be the relationship and fill a void.
Wow. So seeing like a relationship to, plug the holes in the void of yourself, and therefore having so much pressure to make you feel a certain way, and actually not having that internal sense of safety in yourself. And actually now it sounds like there's so much freedom in knowing that we spoke about the parental like wounds or the childhood wounds, it's like of validation or acceptance, that you meet yourself in that. So it's a cleaner approach to dating, because actually you're healing your own deepest, like what my actual friend called recently, so I love this term of like sacred wounds, the earliest, most potent wounds are sacred ones, because you've got your own back in those. You get to have a clearer experience in dating, because it's not all mixed up into one soup.
Yeah, I love that description of how the cleanness. So like you're going into dating to see, like seeing whether you like this person, versus going into dating with all of these underlying, like, are you going to fill the hole of self-love? Like, are you going to validate me? I need you to do this. And like all of these pieces lead you to them acting like trying to manipulate the situation, or not acting like your true self.
Yeah, so true. Like, if I'm this, or like if I message at this day, should I leave this gap? Should I call? Like all of these things are like and that comes back to the control piece that we've spoken about. Like if I can control the situation, then maybe I'll feel safer in the relationship, rather than finding that internal sense of safety that I'm loved, I'm safe, I'm accepted in myself, and I'm choosing to come into connection from a place of overflow, of like how gorgeous, how abundant, how beautiful would it be to consciously spend time together to learn more about myself while I get to know you. And because we're having so much fun and incredible times together, and I want to make more of that, rather than those unmet needs.
Yeah, I love that. I really love that. And that's it just creates a completely different dating situation.
Yes, so different. And so I love how we're really holding the vision for the relationships. I think we've spent years carving out, like these are taken of like healing our trauma, developing communication skills, like working with our triggers, learning in relationship with others and being messy and vulnerable and getting it wrong and working at the nuances. And it's like it allows us to hold the vision of how we feel so deeply met in relationship. And so here I would love to know, like, what are some of the biggest, like, is mistake the right word? Yeah, like, or like, what would you even say to like your younger self, the one that wanted to be the cool girl? Or like, what did you notice in terms of like, yeah, how she would act? And like, wait, I'm trying to, my question really is like, what are some of the biggest mistakes you've made in dating and how did you learn from them?
Yeah, that's a really great question. And you know, I think one of the biggest pieces when I look back is like where I've been dating from. As in, like, if I look back on my dating history, like, I can see how many times I went on dating apps out of loneliness and to try and like fit, and like those experiences were never fulfilling. Those experience, like, because I was coming from a place of lack and I was coming from a place of, you know, wanting to fill a void and not knowing how to really look after myself. So just like really being able to like to be really honest with myself and to really check in with where I'm coming from. And I would also say in terms of like mistakes, just that I think the piece that you're talking about where you shift the perspective of not being worried about what they think of you and really focusing on what you think of them. I didn't learn that early enough. Like, you know, that was a really, and I dated a lot and that was always the focus was like, what do they think of me? But also like, I think so I've been single officially now for like 7 years. Like my last partner was 7 years ago, and that was, you know, quite a tumultuous relationship. But I think I would really remind myself that like singlehood is really beautiful. I think I rush, like there's been like a rush behind me of trying to find the partner, of trying to find the soulmate relationship. And so I've been dating from that respect, and I've been dating and like putting this pressure on things instead of being able to just enjoy it, like being able to like see the beauty in where I'm at instead of trying to force myself like to be somewhere else and to find that relationship. And dating from like letting the desire or the desperate need, which it was back then, to be in like a relationship, shadow my judgment and like stay in situations longer than was necessary, or like, you know, if that makes sense.
Wow, this sounds so rich. And yeah, I love like all the learning that you've yielded from this reflection of how you approach singlehood and dating. And when I talk about mistakes, I'm wondering if there's a better word in the English language, like just, or even healing portals or something. Because I don't think we like yeah, mistakes has a connotation that they're bad or something, but really they're just such an invitation for us to get like to grow. So yeah, but this approach you had to dating and the rushing of singlehood, and I think that's something I see really often, of like the incompleteness as whole beings as ourselves, how people can put relationships on a pedestal, how it can be seen as the fix-all. When I find the person, then I'll be fine. And then it can, or like a tick box, or a milestone, when actually none of that will matter if we don't feel whole and complete in ourselves.
Yeah, exactly. And yeah, I think it's this like I so hate you. Like none of them have been mistakes, you know, like I couldn't, but because it's all been beautiful and learnings, and I look back and I think, oh my gosh, like I could have just been so much more present with myself. I could have like really, but then it's all perfect, and I so know that I had to go through all of those portals to get to where I am now. But like you say, like it is like this rushing of this rushing to get out of singlehood is as if like you're not like, because now like we speak, like our lives are so beautifully full and rich and like connected, and like gosh, like we've got really incredible lives, and that's possible to feel that depth, and then also like to choose like if you want to date or not on top of that, from a place of like, you know, do I feel the call to do that right now, instead of like I do not want to be single anymore, I hate being single.
Yeah, as opposed to I can't sit with the sensations of being with myself. And I guess it comes back to that, how you spoke about celibacy, of like sitting with that, okay, where do I seek validation, approval, acceptance, love from others in order to feel okay by myself. I love this, and I deeply resonate in terms of some of my own like learning, or like what I would do differently is like that staying in relationships too long and settling for the bare minimum because it felt better than nothing.
And I think there's levels to that piece too, isn't there? Which we've been discussing very recently, is like when you are used to a certain level, like even a slight up level, like even a slight, you know, slightly more availability, or slightly more like ability to hold the harder conversations feels incredible in your system. And also like you're worth everything that you desire when it comes to relationships. And so like, yeah, this is where the piece of having sisterhood in your life who hold you to that highest and remind you of what's possible is so important, for sure.
Yeah, oh, I love what you just said. Like you are worth everything that you desire in relationships. And yeah, I think it's such a beautiful like line to end with, as we hold that vision for people dating, and knowing that there's so much rich learning and growth, and relationships as a spiritual practice, and conscious relationships as a personal development piece in our lives that allow us to grow and heal and evolve through seeing relationships as teachers, and that we are full and whole by ourselves, and we get to come into conscious relationships with others, platonic or intimately, from a place of fullness and a place of meeting our needs and having our needs met by others. Oh, thank you so much. I'm so grateful for all just your honesty, the vulnerability within these conversations, and therefore like the depth of being able to unpack some themes that I feel are really common, especially for women, around dating patterns. And when we look through them with a lens of self-acceptance and humor and lightness and kindness and compassion, how healing that can be and how much we can grow and evolve through it. So thank you for being that person and this figure to have to navigate these conversations with. I'm so grateful.
Thank you so much. Thank you for, I've learned so much from you, and just being able to walk this path with you and, laugh whilst we do it is it's the medicine. We do laugh a lot. We do.
I like it.
And it's incredible, because it can be hard sometimes, but it's beautiful. It really is. So thank you so much.